Ever since I was a little girl, everything I do has been about logic. Everything is in pieces. And I take everything I see and try to turn it into a set of bits that I can put together and solve. And I think for me, data and tech is all about doing that with the real world. I'm disaggregating the world into a set of pieces that I can put together and solve in a logical way, because I believe that the whole world is actually logical. Yeah, so if I had to pick a role model, I think it would have to be my mum. So my mum was, until she retired about 5 years ago, a clinical scientist. So she did all of the diagnosis for genetic disease in the southwest of England. She did her PhD when she had 3 children under 10. She'd be up in the morning to hang the washing out and make everyone in our family, including my dad who worked at home, a packed lunch, to then throw all of us into the car, drop us off at school on her way into work. At 6 o'clock the oven would beep, dinner that she'd prepared last night would be ready, and her car would pull up on the drive and she'd serve it and we'd all sit down and have dinner together. I still aspire to reaching kind of that level of organised, but that really has enabled me to do more than I think most people imagine is possible in one day, and certainly in one lifetime so far. But the biggest point where I made a conscious decision to go forward and do things differently, perhaps to the way other people have done them, is at the point I had my children. I took my whole year of maternity leave on both occasions and had a brilliant year. I decided I was going back to work full time. And I went back to work full time because I felt that that would give me the best choice of projects in terms of what I was going to do. Because I didn't want to go to work 3 days a week and do a job I hated. I had to do a job that I was going to enjoy, because that way I could justify leaving my kids, because I was doing something I enjoyed, and I was a much better person and a much better mum to them if I was happy in what I was doing. I guess to let you in on a secret, I have very little confidence, and people look at me, and I say this particularly when I'm talking to graduates and early professionals at work, is I say, I hate standing on a stage. It fills me with dread and I'm shaking. And every time I look in the mirror, I question everything I do. Every piece of work I do, I wonder what I could have done differently, and I don't believe it's ever good enough. Really, the big shift for me was the point at which I had somebody who I was working quite closely with. I at the time was about 6 years into my career. He was quite a senior executive and I was working very closely with him, and he described me as a kitten. He said, "You're like the kitten who's playing on the patio and really wants to go to the end of the garden. And, we all know you can get to the end of the garden and the grass is not that scary. You just need to be brave enough to step onto it." And I do still think that sometimes. I think of the kitten and the grass and the patio, and I think, no, you've just got to jump for it, because actually there's a whole lot more fun to be had at the bottom of the garden. I think it's important to be open about your achievements, but I'm not one for kind of blowing your own trumpet. I don't feel like I need to tell everyone what I've done, and I haven't gone through my career feeling that I've needed to shout about, I did this and I did that. There is a lot of, actually, when you achieve things, they do speak for themselves. And one of the ways I've got over the confidence challenge is actually I've used feedback from other people. So my clients said, I achieved this, that and the other, and they could never have done that on their own. And I've often used those little pieces of feedback to quote other people, rather than feeling that I'm saying, I'm really great, because I find that really, really uncomfortable. So I am somebody who sees the world in individual pieces. And I'm always seeking to break things down into separate blocks and to find a methodical way to solve the problems and then to solve the next problem. And I think that really was what summed up my attitude to most things, but certainly from a work perspective.